Welcome back to RFD-TV Live with AGROTAIN. Joining me in studio, Blake Gray with Koch Agronomic Services and Jed Lafferty with Planalytics Business Weather Intelligence. Very interesting conversation. I hope you're finding it interesting as well. And we want you to join us with questions along the way. We'll be opening our phone lines a bit later, but here is the toll-free number, 877-731-6733. Again, telephone lines opening now, so don't wait. Be the first, perhaps, and we'd love to hear from you no matter where you are in the country. Maybe too wet, too dry, too cold, too hot. Last year, you probably saw it all, and as you look at different areas of the country. So we look forward to hearing from you. Jed, we're going to put you, we talked about, and we saw the review here of January 2010 and then January 2011, but let's everybody say, okay, that's history. Let's look ahead to 2012. Take us through this year as far as your research is showing. Again, you're not a meteorologist, but what Planalytics is looking at.
Well, where we left you, we were talking about La Nina and the fact that we had switched from an El Nino in 2010 to a strong La Nina in 2011. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned earlier, year on year, weather only repeats itself 20% of the time. But we're facing a situation now where we're going to see a repeat of a La Nina. The only thing is that not all La Ninas are exactly the same, and we're already seeing there were some differences this past October, November, from what would be typical in a La Nina. So what we see here is the same kind of map that you saw before, but now we brought it forward a full 12 months. To January of 2012. And the area in the equatorial Pacific is still cold. The waters are still cool. So we're still in a La Nina state.
That's the blue circle. That's right in the center
area
there.
Within that circle right in the center of the map. Mm-hmm. But there are two other factors that are very critical that our meteorologists have focused on. And one is this cool temperatures off of the coast of California and Alaska. That is highlighted with that arrow with a PDO. The PDO stands for Pacific Decadal Oscillation. And it's one of these weather cycles that we track from time to time. And we're currently in a PDO cycle at the same time that we're in a La Nina. But the most significant thing that's happened in 2012, it's different from 2011, is what you see in the North Atlantic, where you see the arrow, the MDO, which stands for the Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation. Again, it's one of these weather phenomenons where the sea surfaces here are warm as opposed to cool in other areas. That's different than last year. And as a result, what we're finding is that Arctic mass, which typically would be bringing cool temperatures down into North America to combine with the moist air, which we're not having, would bring snow. We're not seeing that this year.
Yeah, we all know about snow cover. Well, they have some now, but
exactly.
Up until last weekend.
But compared to normal, we're seeing quite a bit less.
Exactly.
But all of that snow, if you've been following some of the markets for wheat in particular, it's really hit Europe in a very big way. It's also hit Alaska. So we haven't seen the snow that we saw last year. In some areas, that's a good thing, but for the most part, that's going to affect the available crop moisture for a number of producers in 2012. Mm-hmm. We're not seeing the snow down in the hard red wheat areas of western Kansas, the southern plains, where snow actually serves to insulate that crop during that critical winter period. So that's where we are. That's what we have currently in terms of the sea surface temperatures. But when we look at the forecast maps that we've pulled together for you, when we look at February, the temperature outlook. Now what I'm showing here are a couple of maps that we've pulled together that are based on a couple of things. First of all, there have been 7 La Ninas since 1950 where we've seen similar circumstances, where we've seen a La Nina, we've seen a PDO, we've seen this warm temperatures off the North Atlantic. Our folks look at all of our historic weather that goes back over 100 years, and we look at years when we've seen similar conditions repeating themselves in 2012. So based on that, we've put together what we consider to be the best guess that we can come up with in terms of what temperatures are likely to be in the month of February. So when we look at precipitation, we see, again, a continuation of that very, very dry situation triggered by the La Nina in the southwest, that not only will we continue to see that carried over, we feel, into Texas and Oklahoma, we see that spreading northward, not necessarily as a drought, but as drier conditions than we saw last year.
Yeah, and as you look at that, you make a point that, there is snow cover now in western Kansas, western Nebraska, but that map, according to your analysis, showing that you're going to see more days when we're not going. That snow cover may go away.
Exactly.
With the previous slide we saw, and the dryness continues in that wheat belt, just because that's where the crop is in dormancy right now. But it does, as you say, need that snow cover, and doesn't look like they're going to get any, at least in February.
Well, and Mark, you bring up a good point, and that is that you don't always see, in this particular map series, we're seeing averages for the entire month. That doesn't mean that we won't see sub-zero temperatures,
right.
We won't see a snowfall, but it means that overall we think it's going to be less than before.
In fact, we've gone to March. Before we get to that, real quick, just going back, you said people may be watching us out in western Kansas or the foothills of the Rockies, and they say, well, I'm standing here and I've still got a foot of snow in the ground, Jed and Mark, and but that might be, you said, as we were talking about that prior to the show, that might be the rest of the they might be only precipitation they get measurable here for the rest of the month, so it's all going to average out.
Exactly. And we saw in October, November in Texas, in the High Plains area, they got some precipitation, which was much needed.
Oh, yes.
But it was short-lived, and it didn't make it very far into the soil to make a difference, and that will probably continue.